Welcome to the Success Pick and Mix podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Raby, a professional pick and mixer. I'm a personal brand coach, a speaker, an actor, a creator, and a podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you find and create your version of success. Your pick and mix of life and business on your terms. A blend that complements your personality, your goals, and your circumstances. Since 2018, I've been sharing interviews and mini episodes to help you unlock your next step, to make it real and make it happen. Round here, we dream big. We go for the ideal version. We talk about money and make moves our future selves would be proud of. This podcast is free and available for you whenever you need it. So do rate, review, and subscribe for new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices and availability, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests. Now, on to today's episode. In today's episode, I'm really pleased to say that I'm speaking to Fabella, who is a story and a business strategist who crafts words for purpose-driven entrepreneurs to pivot with purpose and connect with the people they were meant to serve. She's a world-recognized speaker, author, and trainer who's been featured in international media like the Huffington Post and El País. She's the co-founder of a bilingual brand and website agency, Brand in a Bottle. She's originally from LA and now based in Madrid in Spain, and she works in English and Spanish to create meaningful communication strategies that connects brands with their buyers and their believers. If you're in business, this is going to be a great one for you. Grab a piece of paper and a pen and enjoy the episode. Hi Kay, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Nikki. How are you today?
Oh, really good, thank you. So, firstly, I would love just for you to give an introduction and say who you are and tell us a little bit more about your business.
For sure. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. My name is Fabella. I'm the story finder for pivoting entrepreneurs. And basically what I do is if you're in the middle of a rebrand and you're looking to up-level your business quickly, I help you figure out and clearly define what your story is and specifically what your new story is to attract the people that you're meant to serve. And I'm also the co-founder of Brand in a Bottle, which is my bilingual branding and web design agency, which I run with 2 Spanish business partners from where I'm based here in Madrid. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me and what I do, and I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So how did you first get to know that story was going to be so integral to your story, as it were? How did you know that that was the way, how you would fit within business?
Absolutely. So I think it's multiple things. I think one important aspect was I'm obviously not Spanish. So I followed in my parents' footsteps because they were originally from the Philippines and they immigrated to California where they're now based and where I grew up. And I've now immigrated from the US to Spain. And so I think when you're growing up as, a child of immigrants, you always get that second question, unfortunately, growing up of, no, but where are you really from?
Right.
And at first it really used to bother me. I would say, well, I'm really from California. And I don't know. I think there's something about, being a minority and, having people as for parents who are not from that country initially, that you instinctively know that the world is big and round and wide and full of so many types of people. And you start to get better at telling that story. So I'd like to say that that's where my abilities as a storyteller first started, was having to answer that initial question and realizing that it was an opportunity for me to connect with people. And another important thing was actually one of my favorite quotes from my mom. She taught me a lot about empathy early on, and that continues to be my superpower for helping businesses in any industry with any different kind of client find their story. She said all the time, everyone has a story and it deserves to be told. So naturally, that made me curious, that philosophy of I want to talk to others, I want to get out and to explore. And I would also say that my love for storytelling was also directly inherited from my dad because he grew up loving things like Star Wars and Star Trek and Greek mythology and Lord of the Rings and basically everything sci-fi, fantasy. That was his jam. And I was the son he never had.
Brilliant. So you were lined up to watch all of the things.
Exactly. So he passed on his love of all of those like massively epic stories to me that just like really lit up my imagination. And I don't know, I think all of those things together and my love for stories and for the ability and the magic of like using them to connect to people, even more so since I moved here to Spain, when, you know, you have that extra barrier of not knowing the language right away, you see how important they are to create and cultivate relationships with the people next to you, whether it's, you know, somebody who's preparing your drink at the bar or just like a random conversation you strike up on the bus. You see how stories are our currency, right, for sharing. And I see that even now, and I stress this to my clients, that communication in business is moving to become more transparent and authentic and human. And how we build relationships, business or personally, is through sharing these stories. And so that's what I try to do in my business and for myself as well.
Yeah. I think it's so true. And I think certainly since my brand has expanded, since I guess becoming a mother and talking much more about my family life and sort of pulling all the bits of my brand, as it were, together. Bizarrely, I've had a lot more clients because I guess I'm showing up in much more of as a whole person. And I think that would be great. I mean, I know you and I spoke before we started recording about being an introvert and enjoying working independently and things like that. How would an introvert who is maybe not used to being that person who puts their hand up first in class at school or gives their opinion freely, how would they start to identify their story in a way that works well for them?
Absolutely. So yes, I think as an introvert, I think it's important to manage your energy.
Yeah.
So basically, as an introvert, I think one of the things that I'm going to admit to you here, Nikki, is that as an introvert who is going to a networking event and in Spanish, I used to rehearse in front of a mirror everything I was going to say, because you're trying to figure out how do I say this in the right context? How do I put the words in the right order? Mm-hmm. And there's something also about muscle memory, which I think that you can attest to as well as an actress, and as a performer, that the more that you rehearse behind the scenes, the better. And so you can actually get that in your bones in a bit, right? Like you write out something that feels good to you, that captures exactly what it is that you want to say, and in obviously a way that you feel comfortable with sharing, because ultimately it's your story and you're the author of it. And then practice it until it feels natural, until it feels like something that you don't even have to look at a cue card for. When you deliver it, you know that it automatically, with all the nerves of being out and about and having to, whether it's at a networking event or get up on stage, you know it's now in your bones because you've rehearsed it so many times. And, some of the greatest storytellers, we call Steve Jobs one of the greatest storytellers or brand storytellers of our time. And he used to rehearse meticulously to like the angle of his finger, like how he would emphasize something. And so, being an introvert, I don't think I think it's something to keep in mind to manage your energy, but set yourself up for success before you go out there and share your story by practicing it and rewriting it and getting it to a place where you're ready to share it before you go out and do so.
Amazing. And how have you gone through the various incarnations of your business, and how have you used story to not only be a personal brand, but also now in your new business as well?
Right. So I became an entrepreneur by accident, which I think it seems to be a common theme when I start to talk to different people, because I was here in Spain, and I'd already been living here for a couple of years with my partner at the time, now my husband. And I was waiting for a work contract to be renewed. And when it fell through at the last minute, I had to reinvent myself quickly. And so I was looking at basically this opportunity that had been placed in front of me. At the time, it felt a little bit like a crisis, but I saw it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
To think of, well, what skills do I have and how do I want to take my career forward? Because I was not thinking I wanted to start a business at the time. I just thought, well, what's something I naturally am good at and what can I go out and study, to get a master's degree in.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, me being bilingual and, being fairly good at communication and understanding a little bit about social media and online marketing, I thought, well, why don't I go and get a master's in digital marketing? And every single master's degree I applied for said they wanted experience, which I didn't have. And every single place where I applied to get that experience wanted a master's degree, which I didn't have either. So I was like, well,
someone just help me.
I know, where do I start here? This is a chicken and the egg situation, So what I decided to do was, well, why don't I, freelance for a little bit? Somebody had pointed me in the direction of what used to be Elance and Odesk, and now is Upwork, I think. Yeah, that's back in those days. And I said, well, I'll get a few clients online. I'll go to a couple of networking events and I'll see if I can get a few basically things for my portfolio, projects for my portfolio that I could then use to apply for a master's degree later on. And you basically know the long and short of it. I didn't end up working for any of those companies. I kept working for myself because I loved it, not realizing I loved it. And then after that, I just kind of kept growing and one client led to another, word of mouth led me here. And I just kind of evolved organically. And then after that, I went to an online marketing course here in Spain. I figured, well, I'm here in Spain, I might as well learn about online marketing here. And it just so happened that the lady who was conducting that seminar, I didn't know this at the time, was like a massive online marketing influencer and has since grown even more. And I mentioned to her that I was learning about story and this is what I was specializing in. And she said, well, no one's ever written about story on my blog before, and I'd really like to have you come on as a guest expert. And I said, wow, amazing. Thank you. I would love that. And, fast forward to a couple of years later, and I'm still getting referrals from that post. I've been cited in like international banks and like corporations as like the expert on story, because I didn't realize at the time I was the first person talking about it in Spanish in a visible way.
Right.
Which was insane. And so that ended up leading to, getting featured in a massive newspaper here, El País, which is like the New York Times of the Spanish speaking world, and getting a full page feature in their Sunday Times because I was so well positioned, because they were like, oh, you're talking about it and you're American. And obviously because you're American, you know what stories is all about and we want to learn about it. And that then led to, me getting hired by like Standard & Poor's and then Google, and like all of these amazing opportunities fell into my lap again on accident. And it was right around that time that I was starting to have kind of a little bit of a, well, what do I want to do now with this business? Because I'm responding, but I'm not being proactive about it. And I think that that's a trap a lot of us fall into. We don't initially start thinking we're running a business. And then when it starts to go well, you then have to sort of sit back and reevaluate and zoom out and say, is this where I want it to be going? And that's what happened to me. And so in the middle of that, I was also in the several, accountability partnerships, masterminds, which I think is super key for anyone who is an online business owner. Find your people, even if they don't live in the same city, find your people and connect with them.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's invaluable.
Absolutely. And one of them happened to be a web designer who is based in Valencia, in another city here in Spain. And we'd been talking for about like 6 months or so, and we were starting to refer clients to each other, because what I did with Story, entrepreneurs who come to me and then want a place to put it. and I would refer people to her, and vice versa. People would come to her for a website and they would always get tripped up on their message and they just didn't know what to say. And so their copy would take months and ages. And she was like, "Hey, just sending them to you. They need clarity and you can provide them that." And that turned into one day on one of our calls, "Hey, like, we send each other a lot of clients. Do you think maybe we could create something for our overlapping audiences?" And I was also looking at the time for who I could creatively collaborate with, because like we said before, I'm an introvert, but I need my swivel in the chair moment as a creative of just, "Hey, can you come look at this?" Like I was missing that in my business. And, one conversation led to another and led to another. And we started Brand in a Bottle last year. So her as the web designer, me as a storyteller and copywriter, and our third friend who's Nere, who's a graphic designer. And we take you through a whole process where we create a story-driven brand and website. So I continue to serve my audience, but at the same time, I can still operate for my personal brand if you come to me for just the story. And so it's been this lovely evolution that hasn't, there's that graphic online of what you think success looks like, and it looks like a straight line, and what success actually looks like, and it's basically a spaghetti noodle. Like, I'm a spaghetti noodle.
Yeah.
In my journey of getting here. But, along the way, it really just came down to, how do I step back every so often and make sure, is this business aligned with who I am? Is this business aligned with the people that I want to serve? And how do I adjust accordingly?
Ooh, I'd love to talk more about that in terms of how do you know, I guess, if something is right for you and aligned with you. The reason I'm asking is because if you are in this personal brand space, I guess, where there are no rules, or there isn't so you do this and then you do this, it is that sort of spaghetti on a plate moment. Sometimes we can get that shiny object syndrome of like, oh, that could be good, or maybe that's a good opportunity. How do you know what to choose, and how do you know how to move forward?
So it's actually, a mentor of mine said this a really long time ago, but she said, it's about the energy that you bring to things. If I feel myself pushing more than pulling, if I feel something is heavy and not light, that's when I know I need to either let it go or step back.
Right.
And I think that's a hugely powerful thing that we forget, is that we are running this business or creating it because we want it to fit into our lives and to complement who we are.
Yes.
And give our truest selves to it. And if none of those three things are in place, then that's when we have to remember, oh, wait, I can change things. I can pivot. I can adjust or tweak or walk away from it entirely, whatever that looks like for you. But you're ultimately the person in control of it. And it's easy to lose sight of that. But I think it comes down to your energy and checking in with yourself once in a while.
And if you are thinking about, yes, maybe it is time to tweak or refine or streamline, what are the first steps, I guess, to knowing that it is time for a pivot, and then how to go about it, apart from hiring you immediately, of course, is what they need to do. But what's that sort of inner work? How can they make that work for them?
Sure. So I think, well, like you said, work with me. But the other thing is,
here's my contact page.
Here's my contact information.
Right.
But it really is internal. I mean, I just, at the time of when we're recording this, I've just come out of a pivot myself for my personal brand, because I was trying to figure out, essentially, while I was building my agency Brand in a Bottle, I didn't really quite know what to do with it. So I just let it sit. And it is a lot of internal work, because you do have this sort of, once you realize that something's not feeling light, again, coming back to the energy of it's heavy, I've outgrown my mission, the audience that I'm serving is no longer the audience that I want to serve, I have maybe a new set of skills or passions that I want to pursue that don't really feel like a fit for this business, or could even be an expansion of my current products or services. There's a multitude of different things that could be happening, because as business owners, as people, we're always constantly in evolution. right? So
Yeah.
once you've noticed that little bit of tension between, okay, this doesn't feel right anymore. And I think we're all innately intuitive beings. It's just a matter of tuning into that.
Yes.
Then the next bit is, okay, what do I want now? Now that you've decided I'm pivoting, how do I move forward? And what do I want this to look like when I come out of the other side? And believe me, you're going to want to have a clear vision of what it's going to look like on the other side, because there'll be moments in that journey when you're in that canyon, like trying to think like, wait, why did I do this? What did I get myself into? Like, there's so many questions and I don't have the answers.
Oh, and just before we continue, I would love just to touch on that, because I think what you're saying is so practical, but also we know that those questions come not only like, oh no, why is this taking so long, or why is this happening, but also that self-doubt of, who am I? You know, the personal stuff, the devil on your shoulder. Who am I to do this? Am I ready? Does somebody like me do something like this? How do you navigate those as well?
For sure. Yeah, it's growing pains, right?
Oh,
just like
God, and it's so ugly when you're in it. It's just, you have to just stick your head down almost and keep going.
absolutely. And I think the important thing to keep in mind is, I know it sounds painful, and another way that I likened it the other day to a client was, you've climbed Mount Everest before, so you know what this looks like, and it's almost harder to climb it again because you're starting at base camp and you're like, I remember every step. Climbing that mountain, it was not pleasant, and oh no.
It was actually like 3 years ago this week where I found out I was pregnant, and so bizarrely, because of the weather, I'm kind of getting all that. I'm not pregnant, but I'm kind of feeling like all those feelings again, and I'm just like, oh, it's taken me back. I do remember it. It's right there.
Exactly. It's like, you know, coming back to like, it's you have that memory as a business owner of just knowing, you know, I've walked this path before, and it's hard. But when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, like the pain of actually going through figuring out who you are and where you want to take this business and what steps you want to see yourself take in the future with it, that when you weigh that against the pain of you staying where you are because you feel like you don't want to be seen as wishy-washy, or because you don't want to be perceived as somebody who changes their mind, or because you don't want to be seen as a quitter, or because you're like, but I've given so much already to this and I don't want to walk away. And you stay for that. I prefer the first kind of pain, to come out of it the other side as your truest and highest self, as both a person and as a business owner.
Me too. And I feel like sometimes we can stay in that position so long because people, you know, and it may be that the work is continuing to come, that people are still requesting those kind of services from you, or you are referred to because of those great things that you're good at. But just because they naturally come doesn't mean you can continue. I've spoken about it on the podcast before, but I was an agent for 5 years as my sort of out of work acting job, and I loved it because it was great for my business building and understanding that other side of things. But certainly in terms of helping other actors, after I left being an agent, it went on way too long, and I thought, I don't want to help people write letters as a, you know, dear sir, madam, and then write 3 good paragraphs. I want to help people on a greater scale, and that took a long time for me to actually lean in and go, yeah, it's okay, just because you've done something, you can change direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's awesome that you leaned into what felt really true and aligned with you and followed that intuition, I think. And then remembered that I can do this and gave yourself, I think that's ultimately it, is give yourself that permission to understand that you can move to something better.
Yes. And how have you changed the way that you work from being a personal brand to collaborating with others? Because before we recorded, we were just saying collaboration is the future. You know, we all want to, we're sort of rebelling against the online world slightly and go, no, we need to see each other in person, or we're craving that connection. How have you been able to switch into working as part of a collective?
So I've actually taken to it really well because I think that each of us are all individually still operating as service providers with our own personal brands. And so we have created a really nice structure of, knowing when we need to check in for meetings. We're not going to, be in meetings for no reason. Actually, we question ourselves sometimes. We're like, is it something we can meet over? We could do this on Slack.
Yes.
Or we can share things via email, or we have, we live in such an amazing time, Nikki, with just how many tools we have at our disposal to make communication in different kinds of formats so easy. So knowing we let each other know like when our working hours are, when, we're meeting with clients or when our meeting days are. We're always very respectful of each other's boundaries, and it's up to us each individually to set those, right? And I think ultimately it's a nice payoff because I continue to still work from home, mostly from my home office. And then occasionally when I'm back in California visiting my family with like good Wi-Fi and my laptop, which, the only wrench in that is it's a 9-hour time difference between here and Spain.
Yes.
So like I have to like message my girls here in Spain when I'm like waking up and I'm like, morning. And they're like, well, we've already gotten through half the day.
Yes, we've already saved the world here, but, just while you've been sleeping.
Exactly. But, that's the only sort of quote unquote downside to it. But honestly, it's really just been about each of us setting our boundaries, meeting when absolutely necessary for the creative process, and being in constant communication with each other in the different avenues that we have, whether it's because, all of us work virtually. So we meet, and then it's important for us to at least meet once a quarter as a team. And so I've chosen well because both my partners are in Valencia, which is near a beach. And Madrid, the only thing it doesn't have is a beach. And I'm just like, oh, great, cool. I'll come visit you guys.
Yeah, I'm available. Let's do our meetings there. It's amazing how much you can make it work. I work a lot in a members club in Soho in town. And I remember going to look round and asking the lady, I was like, do you allow children here? And she was like, no, we're so sorry. I was like, don't be. I don't want children here. It's busy enough at home. And I love having that time where I'm like, because I can't do the two things at once. That's one thing that I've learned for myself is that to juggle while my son just, nicely plays is not going to help anything. So I would love to know, have there been any books that have just changed your life a little bit or opened your eyes in a different kind of way?
Oh, so many.
I know, me too.
There was actually, I know this is one of the questions that you said that I should look at before the call. And I was like, oh my God, just how much time podcast? There were several. I think the first one that kind of started me thinking about story without even knowing that it was about story was Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yes, it's
I know it's a little bit outdated now, but the principles still ring very, very true. Of it comes back to your why, and I think that's ultimately everything that we've just been talking about. If we could like pin it around something in this conversation, is it all comes back to why are you doing it? And that was a huge game changer for me. And his TED Talk as well, because initially I was like, oh, I don't really want to, I'm always looking for, I'm a visual learner. So I was like, I'll watch the TED Talk.
Yeah.
And the TED Talk turned me on so much that I was like, I need to read this book.
And then you're like, reading it until 3:00 in the morning going, I've got to finish it.
It's so funny. Like, I'm actually looking at my Kindle as I was prepping for this call. I was like, I don't think I've read a fiction book in so long. I think everything is so.
I thought that. I thought that the other night. I was just like, okay, I've got to stop developing myself and just like read for pleasure sometimes, because I love doing that too.
Absolutely. And I think another book, I mean, speaking of that, was because, you and I obviously are creative souls as well as ambitious women, was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which came out last year. Good. Oh, it's so good. And just about cultivating creativity as a practice and seeing it as something that works in conjunction with you and not a faucet that you can turn on, which I think when you're an ambitious person and you're creative, you're always trying to figure out like, what can I do to maximize productivity? Like, and then just remembering that there's a joy in it, and that's part of the process is cultivating that with you. And on that same vein, The Artist's Way was another one.
Yeah, so good. We have the same bookcase, I feel.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll have to have just like record another podcast just about books one day.
Yeah.
It was such a great game changer for me. And although I don't do the morning pages as much anymore, it's what got me into the practice of journaling. And that has now become incorporated in my morning routine. I never, start my day without it. And that was really, really inspiring and something that I plan on coming back to again and again, which was a great book. And I mean, another one for story specifically was, I'm a huge fan of Bernadette Jiwa. She's based in Australia, but she's Irish, and she calls from Dublin. She's from the storytelling capital of the world. And she's probably the foremost thought leader on story. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, any of her books are fantastic, and they're all Amazon bestsellers. But the one that I loved from her, if I was going to recommend one to people listening, is the Fortune Cookie Principle, which is all about this idea of thinking of what we do in our business. Like, people focus so much on the commodity, like the cookie. Like, when you think of a fortune cookie, ultimately, it doesn't really taste that great, but it's about, like, when you open it up, it's that message inside, is that excitement. And that's essentially what we do as business owners. We tend to focus a lot on the hows and the how-tos and the facts and figures and features of our product or service. And that's the cookie, but we're forgetting the magic of the message inside, which is what actually is the emotional connection of your story that you create. And that, I was just like, I was clapping in front of my Kindle, just like, amen, woman, amen. Somebody gets
That's it. I love it when I know I've really tapped into something when I do an Instagram live, and basically everybody who is live there then message me afterwards and gone, oh, thank goodness you've spoken about this. I've been thinking about it for so long, and it's so nice that other people feel like that. And it's just when you show up as yourself, isn't it? And give your bit of magic. I know that sounds cheesy, but you know what I'm saying.
But it's so true. Absolutely. And I think that's what we forget, is like the power of story is that emotional connection. And it's not just the story we're telling, it's the stories that our customers or potential customers are telling about us when we're not in the room. And that's what's ultimately the power of it, is like, well, now when I think of Nikki, I know that she does this. Or now when I think of Kay, I know that she does this. And this is the message that spreads on our behalf. And so that's the other part. Well, I won't give away the book, but it's just fantastic. You should read it.
You could totally have claimed that for yourself, by the way. Like, oh, I've got all these new, these are my methods. I won't tell anyone. I would love to know, of course, we wouldn't do that. Bernadette, you worked hard. Where would you like to be? Like, I guess, what are you growing? Where do you want to be in 5 years? I know it's a big question, but I feel like it's always a good one to explore.
It's funny. I think I read so many books, it'd be nice to publish one.
Ooh, yes.
I don't know. I know I have a book in me, and I don't know what that story is yet. I think I'm still living it, so I don't know what it looks like, but I would love to at least share a story, if not one of my stories, in the form of a book to reach more people with that, because I think when we share stories that way, and especially in a book form, we're raising our collective consciousness as people and as a society. So it's giving other people permission to dream and think about things in a different way.
Yes.
And that's what I ultimately would love for this book to be, whenever it comes out of my head.
Yeah. I always think about the people who were like me, 25, 30 years ago, who were dreaming big but had no idea how to do any of the things that I wanted to. And I realised, I was doing a talk the other day, that when I moved to London in 2000 to train as an actor, I'd never met an actor before who actually makes a living from it. I didn't know any professional actors. I just knew that I wanted to. And I just think, gosh, these kids today, they don't know they're born because they have the internet and there's so many resources. And sometimes when I've done talks at uni and, across London, and they'll say things like, oh, I'm just stuck. I don't know where to go. And I think, well, you've got so many opportunities, but you have to know what it is you're looking for, I guess.
Absolutely. And it's so true. I think it's just it maybe in 5 years time, who knows, like some other technology has been invented,
Yes.
which will make it even more possible for like your kids or your grandkids or whoever it is. That's just like now their whole realm of possibilities has been completely expanded. So I don't know, who knows, maybe they'll have invented, maybe artificial intelligence is like more real than abstract than it is now. In that case, like I want to record an AI voice. Who knows? Like I have no idea.
No, and that to me is so exciting. And I think that it really just goes to show that your job is just to keep evolving as a person and keep learning and growing and becoming curious and seeing what's out there, not just in your own industry. And actually, I don't follow lots of coaches, not because for any reason, but sometimes I just find it distracting and I need to have that idea of just that sense of being instinctive as well.
Absolutely. I think, and ultimately it comes down to like, we're always going to be evolving, but as long as we're kind of evolving around who our truest essence and nature is, we can't go wrong. Because like whether it's publishing a book, which it could be in 5 years time, or speaking on stages, or moving to the city and becoming an actor, whatever that looks like for you, you won't really know until it feels right to you. But I think it comes down to, well, is this ultimately helping me serve who I would like to be? And is this how I want to be moving through the world? Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see where I am in 5 years time.
We'll check in. Yeah, exactly. I do remember actually when I went to drama school, I remember walking from the tube all the way and all of the grates, like the piping on the pavement, it was my initials all the way, NR following. So I was like, okay, this is my sign. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Anyway, if people want to find out more about how you work and get more information, where shall I send them in the show notes?
Well, definitely kfabella.com, which is my personal brand, which I still operate from. And that's where I share all my tips on story and on building a business and on pivoting and rebranding in a way that feels aligned to you and helps you get to that next level of your business quickly. Or over at my boutique branding agency, brandinabottle.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I've learned so much, and that's why I love doing the podcast, because I just get to chat to brilliant women who are rocking it, and I hope we meet in the future very soon. Thank you so much, Kay. You've been such a treat.
Thank you so much for having me on, Nikki.
You're welcome. Bye. Thank you so much for listening, as always. We really appreciate it. And if you listen to this and think, oh, my friend would love this, or I know somebody who's starting a business who would really benefit, feel free to share the episode across social media or via email. Also, if you like the episode, I would love it if you head over to iTunes and rate and review and subscribe so you know when a new episode goes live. And also come over to Instagram. I'm often there at Nicky Raby, and you can come and have a chat with me. Let me know your takeaways, and if you have any feedback for the podcast, if there's any particular guests you would love to hear, I'm really open to having a chat about it. Also, you can work with me one-on-one. You can go over to my website, nickyraby.com/coaching. I do one-on-one sessions, I have online courses, and I do in-person events as well. I hope to see you again very soon. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already, feel free to rate, review, and subscribe for all the brand new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices, availability, or just to have a chat with me, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests, and I'll see you next time.